Hi everyone, my name is Douwe Rademacher. I'm with Ipsos in the New York office. And in Ipsos, I'm globally responsible for sort of everything around brand strategy, foundational research like segmentation and UNAs, all the shopper research, and all the advisory businesses. So today I'm very excited to be part of this festival of new market research. And I look forward to speaking to you about sort of embracing the digital disruption to improve our research approaches. And I really hope that this discussion and presentation will inspire you to try some new approaches and technologies. So we all know, I mean, if you look at this slide, you see, and you probably recognize the wave of disruptions that we see across different categories. Mobility has completely disrupted with electrical cars, autonomous, shared, connected. Fintech has really sort of been disrupted with voice interfaces, digital assistant, blockchain, and even soft drinks, travel, healthcare. Across the globe, we see major disruptions as caused by demographic changes, technology, etc. Now, to keep up in this sort of disruptive world, we need to start thinking differently about how to better understand how the consumer system one processes work, sort of deeper understanding in consumers' spontaneous behaviors, capture people's actions instead of their stated responses, and better connect with consumers in the moment. And to do that, I'd like to take you through some findings of a pilot that we've done that have used sort of all of these new technologies. And the pilot that we've done is to rethink the way we're doing users and attitude studies, which normally are based on very long questionnaires. And what we've done in this pilot is use an incredibly short mobile questionnaire with basically only 2 or 3 open-ended questions, but linked with mobile surveys, GPS sensors, passive monitoring to show you a more behavioral approach that gives sort of incredible, deep and broad consumer insights as opposed to the use of long, boring sort of questionnaires. So, and I'll take you through each of the 3 steps that we said before. So number 1, understanding the consumer system one processes. And so what we've used here is something that we called our mobile sort of metaphor elicitation. It's based on the Ipsos Censydiam framework. And the Censydiam framework sort of measures human motivations that are related to a specific category. And that really helps marketeers to make brand decisions based on consumer needs. So we call this Censydiam Metaphors, and we use it to get closer to the System 1 processes. And just a brief introduction. I think most of you have a better, sort of a good understanding of the differences between System 1 and System 1 processes. But it's really based on Daniel Kahneman's famous book, The Thinking Fast and Slow. He defines sort of human thinking in sort of System 2 and System 1, right? Where System 1 is more automatic, intuitive, instinctive, and rapid, and System 1 more considered, more effortful, more focused, and more slower. And the more traditional research asks people to use the System 2 processes because it asks respondents to recall their past behavior, their experiences, their emotions. But in reality, people usually use a System 1 thinking to make choices. So what brands to buy. So Censydiam, sorry, I'm skipping a little too fast. By combining the Censydiam framework with visual metaphors, or pictures as you see here in this slide, we're able to capture their intuitive responses. The approach actually is pretty simple. So we use a collection of pictures, and these pictures have a strong metaphoric meaning, and they cover a wide area of values and emotional benefits. And what we ask the respondents to do is scroll through these images, select the ones that represent what they're looking for in a product or in a brand or even into an occasion, right? And next, we ask them to tell us in their own words through an open-ended question what those images represent to them. And then we use advanced text analytics to process the data and to uncover sort of real meaningful different segments. Now, these set of pictures, they're not really being chosen randomly. We started from a broad list of different values and benefits, imagination, thrill, harmony, etc. And this list was inspired by some existing psychological frameworks. And then we enriched the list with values from our existing Censydiam needs and motivation research. So we ended up with a set of 200 pictures. And then the questionnaire itself was very straightforward. It was 2 steps. One, we asked the respondents to scroll through in total 200 pictures, even though they would normally scroll not more than 20 or 30, and select 5 that they would express what they're looking for in a product or into a, you can also ask in a service, in an occasion, or in a need, right? And in the step 2, which is equally important, we asked to interpret why they've chosen a visual. So what kind of feelings, mood, or emotional experience do these pictures that you've chosen represent? And let me show you an example that came out of this pilot that we've done. And this pilot was around sort of app-based ride-hailing, right? What we use for, for example, for Uber, right? So here you see that it was really split, the responses of why would people choose a specific app-based ride-hailing. There's one group that was really focused around the enjoyment, and we call it the fun-focused, enjoyment, exploration, and recognition. And there was a big group that chose these pictures based on control, security. They had a sense of security, sense of secure family. So those are 2 segments that we found based on this Censydiam Metaphors. And the really interesting thing is that it gives us, this Censydiam Metaphors gives you some real rich consumer language. You hear from consumers' own words what they expect from this category. For example, this one group said luxury, class, great treatment, another group freedom, beauty, life, I love adventure, I love fun. And that rich consumer language make the segments much more dimensional and much more like real life. So in general, such an approach to uncover the system 1 process is more intuitive, more emotional, and is more indirect because of these projective techniques. So that is one example that, on how to use some new techniques to get closer to system 1 processes. The next step, what we've done in this pilot, is using some new technologies to go beyond what people say, to go beyond the people's stated responses and capture people's real actions. And the 2 techniques that we've used is GPS sensors that are available in people's smartphones to uncover offline moments, and passive monitoring. So how does it work? We ask people to download an app on the mobile phone that provides the GPS sensor data for the movements, right? Because every smartphone has basically a sensor that measures forwards, backwards, sideways, and upwards and downwards, right? And the GPS data is captured every 2 minutes. And that allows us to capture your journey, your stages, your pause points. And based on these recorded locations, we can determine how long you stay in a specific location, when you travel, capture the distance, how fast you distance, etc., etc. We'll show you some examples of that in a minute. And then the passive monitoring, we basically ask the respondent to have a cookie placed on their device, and they provide you information on the types of information that you search for mobile or engage with digitally. So, for example, what we found from these GPS sensors is much more than just how they move, but we also saw that that in the automotive mobility sector, people are on the move. They're spending about 1/3 of the day in transit, right? We also know that the people who drive, more than 1/4 of the people have risky driving habits, being distracted, aggressive, or even breaking the law. And looking at app-based ride-hailing companies, you see that brand A uses, and we call it brand A and brand B. Brand A are more likely to be the night owls, the workaholics, than the brand B uses. So how do we do that? Right? Based on the GPS data, we determine important locations in people's life, right? We know if your phone hasn't moved for, let's say, 5-6 hours, that's probably the place where you sleep, because the first thing that people do when they wake up is pick up the phone and see if there are messages, right? So we know where you sleep. We also know if your phone moves, that is probably, and it moves, we know how far you live from your work. And the speed of your phone movements, we know if you travel by car or by train or by bicycle or by bike. We also know how quickly you skip lanes, how often you stop for a stoplight, and purely that you losing the sensor data, you can bucket people in type of drivers, right? So it gives you an incredibly detailed information on how you behave, purely looking at this sensor data. The passive monitoring, what does that tell us about the automotive mobility category? And we saw that, and of course there's a lot of more data that we're showing you, but just as an example, we learned about the information that people search for or they engage with digitally. For example, the brand A uses, the search for real estate, architecture, cloud computing, entrepreneur, and brand B uses more about commerce, hobbies, finance, and health. So it's a way of better understanding how the users of the different brands differ in terms of what they do and how they behave digitally. So in summary, these GPS sensors and passive monitoring are able to capture behavioral-based data instead of relying what people do. You actually capture real behavior, and it connects with consumers in real time as they engage in their online activities. So that was the second piece, using technology to go beyond what people say and look at how people really behave. And then finally, connect with consumers in the moment. And the example that we're showing here that we've used is using video to the smartphones. So let's talk a little bit about how we can connect with the consumers through video capture. So as part of the pilot, we integrated mobile video, right? And the reason to do that is it's easier for people to speak in a phone than to type it in a mobile questionnaire. So we asked them an open-ended question, and we asked them to submit a video of the response. And the question that we asked was about what they think about the future of travel. And we pulled out, in this example, all the references to autonomous or driverless vehicles in this analysis. And to show you an example of what we found is, you see there are different sort of types of feedback that people have given in this questionnaire. Some people are very excited about what they expect to see from autonomous vehicles. Some people see the promise. I'm intrigued. I could go on long trips, but it needs to be more refined technology. Some people think that the safety has to improve or will be improved. And some people are truly against this driverless, right? So it gives you some detailed information that you would not necessarily get from asking people to type in the answers on an open-ended question. And a good example is here, right? We typed out the full response of one of the respondents. It's a long story about how I don't know if I would feel entirely safe. I would love not to have to drive my own car. It's a pain in the butt to own a car, etc. There are nearly 300 words. There's no way that people would ever type in 300 words on a mobile phone. And with the use of AI text analytics, you could get all the detail from this, what you would normally get from closed-ended questions. So, in summary, how does it connect with consumers in the moment? It captures the emotions, and you're able to ask people in the moment how they feel and ask them to express themselves in real time. And of course, the final step is, how do you translate all these insights into real actions? So how do you translate this in business opportunities? For example, the Censydiam Metaphors, right? How do you use the insights that people use in app-based ride-hailing for fun and control and security? Maybe you can target them via different motivations, right? And people on the move, they have different profiles. So how can you touch people or reach people in different areas if you know how and where they move? And finally, if you know what people's concerns are on autonomous vehicles, what can you do to take away the worries and have more success with your autonomous propositions going forward? So my final point is, and this was an example on how we did a pilot on a UNA study, which again, as I said before, is normally based on a long questionnaire. And here in this pilot, we've only used a incredibly brief questionnaire. It's only a few minutes with some open-ended questions and some video response, and track people's offline and online behavior, which gave us, at least as much information as you would normally get from a more basic UNA research. So, use metaphor elicitation to uncover motivation with an intuitive, spontaneous approach. Leverage GPS, passive monitoring, and video to move away from respondent recall, and think out of the box and synthesize different approaches for deeper holistic learnings. And that concludes this presentation. Thank you very much, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Douwe. So we're looking for people's questions. We've got one in already.
Okay.
And so the first one we've got is, do you adjust the pictures when you work in different cultures and different countries?
That is a very, very good question. There are two answers to this. First, we have one broad list of pictures, and they were not chosen randomly, right? It was based on different values, different benefits. It was inspired by all these different psychological frameworks, and etc. But we don't change it for cultures, because when you see, I don't really care about the pictures that people choose. They're very agnostic, right? But what I'm really interested in is the meaning that people give to these pictures in the open-ended answers. If I were to just rely on the pictures, one would have to create a different picture set for different cultures, for different genders, for different races, for different, and you will never get enough batteries of pictures for all the tribes that exist in the world. So this is a much more powerful, and you have much less need to change this battery for all the different, let's say, tribes there are, since we ask the respondents to give meaning to the pictures themselves.
And next question we've got is, clients always like new stuff, but then they want to know, how do they track their existing legacy benchmarks?
Yeah.
We run into this as an issue.
Well, okay, there's a few. I don't think it's more of a statement probably than a question. So let me just give two things. One, I believe that one of the biggest mistakes that clients can make is using this statement as a vehicle to stop progress, right? Things need to change, not because we have new bells and whistles, that's irrelevant, but because consumer behavior is changing, I think, fundamentally and rapidly. That means that we need to adjust the way we get closer to this new consumer behavior. That also means you need to start tracking things differently. So yes, you need to break the trend. Now, there are, of course, ways to track historical data to new tools, techniques, right? You can do some parallel tests. You can see how the results from these kind of research questions are different from the one before. There are different ways to adjust, either adjust backwards, adjust forward, or just simply embrace the fact that we have a trend break and you see that things are different from here. So there are different ways to deal with this, but this statement should not be a reason for not changing.
Absolutely. So we've got another question here. Do you have pushback or problems with low participation due to privacy concerns with the passive data collection?
Yeah, that is also a very, very good question. If you and we have a lot of experience in dealing with our panels and peoples to explain to them the privacy areas and how to deal with this. This is a really difficult issue, and when we started this pilot, we had some issues with this. When we clearly explained to the respondents that this is all of these apps we're talking about, the cookie and this app that tracks offline behavior, when we're very clear to put all of these things in one simple Ipsos app, we ask people to download, and the app will be deleted or will be taken away sort of immediately after the research. And we're incredibly clear on how we procure the data and are very clear about our privacy rules. Then it's actually started not becoming a problem anymore. So if you're not very careful, then yes, the respondent rate is an issue. But I think we've solved it with the way we communicate it and the way we deal with the privacy issues. But it's an important question.
Thank you, Douwe. That's been really enlightening, and I'm sure that more people will be in touch.
Thank you very much, Ray.